it goes back to where we started, understanding what's really important to your customers, what you can do and your value to them. And as far as possible, quantify that value.
Coffee's for closers only.
So we've established my proposal is sound in principle. Now we're just haggling over price.
Let's see how much we're going for on eBay.
I mean, it's the same as Dunkin' Donuts. Costs 15 times the price.
Welcome to Impact Pricing, the podcast where we discuss pricing, value, and the negotiated relationship between them. I'm Mark Stiving. Today our guest is Andrew Bailey. Here are 3 things you want to know about Andrew before we start. He started his own consulting firm, has been running it for 12 years. Of course, it's about pricing. He wrote a book titled The 7 Biggest Mistakes People Unwittingly Make When Negotiating and How to Avoid Them. And we're going to have to teach him how to make shorter titles. And his LinkedIn ID is amazing. It is Pricing Mentor. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Mark. Great to be on the podcast.
No worries. Hey, did you get much hassle over the length of that book title? I just gave you some, but...
Yeah, I did. I think I read something that said actually sometimes long book titles can be really useful, but I guess the jury is still out on that one.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting. So let's start. How did you get into pricing?
I got into pricing, probably 16, 17 years ago. I was working for a major UK brewer running a sales team in the southeast of UK, southeastern London. And I guess we were always under pressure, like all sales teams are, to grow profit, grow brand distribution, sales, profit being the main driver. And every year it became more and more difficult to deliver more profit. And so we looked at different ways, discovered a bit of a light bulb moment, I guess, that actually focusing on pricing and margins will be a much more powerful way for us to maintain and grow our profits rather than starting the year with a big sales gap to fill. And we had some successful time managing margins, managing pricing, losing a few customers, keeping the good ones, getting new ones, and making more money. And must have been reasonably successful because I was then asked to do a similar job for the company as a whole. And that's really how I got started on my pricing journey.
What keeps you into it?
I think what keeps me into it is I work with medium-sized businesses, predominantly here in the UK, and also I work with small business owners as well. And I think the thing that really keeps me going is just those moments when people realize that, they're undervaluing what they do. They discover why that frustrates them, why that annoys them, makes them angry. And then they realize there are things that they can do about it to improve their position, prove what they do, achieve the prices that they really should for their products and services, which ultimately makes them more fulfilled in their business and more successful. And I think it's that taking people through that journey of realization to more fulfillment in their business that's the really interesting thing.
I would have to say most pricing people I talk to have a very similar story where they got into it because somebody asked them to do something around pricing. They realized how much power is really there. And then they just said, hey, I want to keep helping other people do this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just that realization and then you're off and running and away you go. It's great.
Yeah. So I was looking at some of your content and you, I think, a lot alike. I often say the words pricing people or companies exist to create, communicate, and capture value. And a lot of what I saw in your content said essentially very similar things. But let's jump to the very end where we talk about capturing value. And because I rarely have people on that want to talk about this, and let's split that into selling value and then that negotiations that goes on the other side. But let's start with selling value. When you think of selling value, what does that mean to you? How do you do that? How do you teach companies to do that?
Yeah, what that means to me is taking the customer through a journey or a process or however you want to describe it, of just understanding the value of what they do and the results and the outcomes they can deliver for their customers. So really getting focused on what that looks like, what they really do for people. and quantifying that, so they've really got a great fix on what drives value for their customers and how they can help their customers deliver that value.
So if I were to stop you for just a second though, Andrew, I agree 100%, but don't you also think that exact same value understanding fits when you're creating new products or new features for your products?
Absolutely. And increasingly, people need to think about the profit elements, the profit drivers, the pricing, margins when they're looking at new products before they get too far into what the product looks like, the features, the benefits. It's about what value it delivers for their customers and what that's going to do for their customers' business or their customers' lives, if you like, and then work back from that to focus on the things that really matter to them. And one of the questions I always pose to the businesses I work with is, what really matters to your customer? What's going to make a difference to them? And ultimately, it's probably only 2 or 3 things you can do that will make such a big difference to them. But focus on those areas and how you can deliver value to help them deliver just makes so much difference. And I think, for me, that value selling journey is understanding what the customer perceives as value, what you can do to help them with that. And then it's really, and I get back to that pricing term, willingness to pay. What we've got to try and do is get the customer in the position that they're willing to pay for those outcomes in a fair way that gives us what we want in return for what we're going to do for them.
Yes. So do you very often find customers where you start at the value selling stage, meaning we're not talking to marketing or product development or anybody else. It's just, hey, we've already got this product. Now help us win deals at higher prices.
I think some customers would like to start there. What I do is backtrack and cover off some of the fundamentals. So go back to something around the product and what it's delivering, thinking about and urging customers, clients to think about the markets they're in, the sectors, the customers, making sure they're dealing with, the most valuable customers that they could do. Then beginning to take them through that value-based pricing type approach before they get to the point of delving into value selling, because without the fundamentals and the foundations, it's just going to be really difficult for them to put all of the pieces in place to be able to have really strong, powerful, compelling value conversations with their customers.
Yes. I find one of the biggest problems that almost every company I deal with has is they don't understand what value means. They don't understand how their customers perceive their value. And it sounds like that's where you start, where you say, let's go figure out what your customers value about your products. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's always a great place to start, because most businesses, certainly the ones that I come across, they've got a great product or service, and that's how the business has grown. That's what they're passionate about. But the product and the service, it's great from the company's perspective, but they really need to ask themselves, what does that do for their customer? Does it really deliver for them, or do parts of it? Quite often have discussions with customers, pick apart their product, their service, features, benefits, and there's a lot in a lot of products and services that customers just don't find that important. And you raise the question with companies, why do you do it? And the answer being, they rarely sit down with their customers and really try and, delve into the depth of that value perception and understand what is really important to them.
Yeah. You said the words value conversation earlier, and to me, that means something really specific, but I'd love to hear your thought or definition of what it is, and then I'll share what mine is.
Yeah, my definition of the value conversation is very much about engaging with the customer in the first part of, if you like, a broader sales process. So it's the conversations that you have with customers around what issues they have, what problems, what needs they have, what they want to achieve, what their goals and ambitions are, and take that process all the way through to hopefully a conclusion where you can both work together. And at every point along that conversation, you can focus on value. So value for me starts, before you really engage fully with a potential customer, all the way through the selling process and beyond, where you're delivering, reinforcing value. So it's all about, whenever I'm talking to that customer, how can I be more valuable to them? How can I get my value across to them? So it's quite a broad area, but really focused on all elements of a conversation with a customer, focused on value rather than it being a specific thing that happens at a specific time, I guess.
Yeah, I would say that we agree mostly on that. When I think of a value conversation, I actually think there's a formula that you walk through in order to get to how much does somebody or a customer value my product. But my favorite description of a value conversation, and I would guess that you would adopt this as well, and that is, as a salesperson, I know my product, but there's no way I really know how much value it can deliver to any given customer. And as a customer, I know my company, but I really don't know how much value I can get from any given product. And this value conversation is really a way for sales and customers to work together to try to figure out what's the real value of the product if we implement it in that site.
Yeah, very much so. And it's that collaborative process that you go through that, can uncover more of the value you can deliver and more of the value there that is for customers to, capture, which is ultimately what they want. They want to get more value out of the customers and the markets they're in. And if we go back to where we started the conversation, Mark, it's those light bulb moments for customers where they realize what they might have been missing out on. When you've discovered that value and how they can begin to use pricing to unlock more value, then it becomes quite exciting for them.
Yes. Yeah. Excellent. Let's shift a little bit into negotiations, if you don't mind. This is
Sure.
This is a topic that I find fascinating. But what do you teach when you're teaching someone about negotiations or helping a company get better at that? What's the big picture first?
That's a big subject. I think for me, one of the things that we've developed in the business is what we call a sweet spot type approach, which tries to bring together the work that you do around customers and markets with a value-based pricing approach, focus that around the value conversation, and then negotiating so that you can get the price setting bit right, and then the price getting bit around the sales conversation, value conversation, and negotiating all come together to give you the best chance of achieving what you want from your value-based approach. So for me, the point about negotiating is it's there to help you secure and protect the value that you're delivering to your customer that you're going to get through your price. So we come at it very much from that type of angle in a collaborative way with that customer. So more partnership focused, more around the recognition that this negotiating is part of a process that helps you get to where you want to get to.
Yes. When you teach salespeople to negotiate, though, are they negotiating with procurement people who weren't part of the decision process, or they tend to negotiate with people who are the decision makers?
They tend to be more focused on dealing with decision makers. Some of them will be with procurement professional buyers, but what we do teach them is, it's about recognizing different stakeholders as well and focusing their approach to the negotiation on the right person or the right role, what their interests are, so that they can, focus more on what they need to for each individual that they might be negotiating with.
I love teaching pricing and value, but I get a little frustrated. It's hard to implement what you've learned after just one class. There are always nuances to what you learn in a classroom that just aren't easy to recall when you're trying to implement them in your own real-world project. To most, pricing feels so risky. To solve this, we've come up with our part-time pricing expert programs. In each program, I learn enough about your business to guide you as you explore and implement new pricing capabilities and new value discovery approaches. We've put together 3 distinct programs to assist with a range of scenarios, from a single project or to help a team within your company improve their decisions, to developing your own in-house pricing expertise. I think pricing is fun, and you might too if it wasn't so scary. If a little guidance, expert counsel, and sound advice would be a benefit on your next pricing initiative, please reach out to me at mark@impactpricing.com. We only have room for a few more companies. Okay, so help me out on this one. How do you negotiate with more than one person in an account? By the way, I used to be a salesperson. I would sell really expensive stuff. And so I dealt with lots and lots of different people inside of an account. But the negotiation was almost always with one person. And so I'm not picturing what you're doing yet.
Yeah, I think for those larger companies that will be dealing with, I guess, a decision-making sort of body, if you like, where they've got people they need to influence who are going to use products and services, those that are perhaps managing the process, those people that are going to sign off on the payment, perhaps ultimately the owner of the business as well. So they all might have different roles to play in that negotiation. So we try and teach people to manage those relationships, manage those different conversations they may have, and be able to cover off those different motivations, different interests as they go through the process.
Yeah,
it's a bit like having a value proposition that has to be focused on individual stakeholders in a business that have slightly different perceptions of value or needs of the product and the service, so that the ability to not only win that sale, but win that sale at higher price becomes easier to do.
Yeah, so maybe I'm using the word differently than you are. So let me push on this just a little bit. I agree 100% that when I'm dealing with many different people inside a company, I want to know what's valuable to that person and communicate that value to that person, without a doubt.
Yeah,
when I
absolutely.
think of negotiation, I think there's somebody in there saying, no, we need a 10% discount. We need to pay 10% less. Are you thinking of it differently than that?
No, I think, again, it's I guess understanding the different roles that there might be within that negotiation. If it's multiple people, that is there an aspect of that negotiation where an individual is driving a lower price? Is it a collective driver for a lower price, or are there ways to perhaps tackle that demand for a lower price by focusing on value, but focusing on value to the people that need that value, rather than just whatever comes out of that lower price? I think unless there's a collective, the whole price, the whole deal has got to be lower, then it's possible to leverage differences in that negotiating group to begin to protect more of your margin if you can do.
Yeah, I think that's the right answer, in that there's somebody there that cares a lot about the value you're about to deliver. And that's the person you really want to be negotiating with, because they care about the value.
Yeah. And I think there's lots of procurement people that, their KPIs are potentially around, cost, discounts, moving them on to more of a total cost of ownership type discussion, is one way of doing that. But I think if you can begin to influence those people through the users of a product or service, or the people who see the perceived value slightly differently, then, it's about trying to secure and protect, your price and margin as much as possible, and using those different levers to do that.
Yes. Okay, when I don't teach negotiations at all. I teach pricing a lot, but I have maybe 3 negotiating rules that I always teach. And before I share mine, I just want to hear, do you have these little hard and fast negotiation rules that you teach people to say, oh, here, do this?
Oh, I think there's a number of rules. The first thing that I would always say to people is, you've got to make sure that your preparation is thorough and you've been through whatever sort of process. I've got a process that I teach people on to really prepare for the negotiation well. And I think if people do that, then their chances of getting a better result out of a negotiation for both them and for the other person, the other side, just increase dramatically. And too often I see people don't put the time and effort into the preparation, don't ask the right questions, don't uncover the right information, just don't take the time to do it really well. So if there was one absolute rule, it's just spend the time and do the work and prepare well.
Yes. So what's coming to mind fast, Andrew, is the story. I got to tell the story if I could. I was riding with a mentor of mine, and we were traveling together almost every week, and we'd go out and we would order chicken wings. And I would always eat half the drumsticks and half the knuckles, right? The knuckles are the ones with the two bones.
Yeah.
Okay? Because I wanted to be fair and I didn't want to eat all the drumsticks, it's like, pfft. And we've been traveling together for a few months, and I don't know how the conversation came up, but he said that he liked the knuckles more than the drumsticks, and I liked the drumsticks more than the knuckles. It was like, oh, we should have had this conversation a long time ago.
Yeah.
Now that reminds me of negotiations and what you were just talking about in preparing for negotiations, where we have to know what is it that we think the other person might like that is easy for us to give up.
Yeah.
How do you do that? How do you find those things?
I'm a firm believer in, people just asking questions using simple language to be able to do that. And I think lots of people go into negotiations thinking it can be a bit cloak and dagger, if that's the right sort of term. If, it can be a bit secretive, it's very competitive. People, hide information. They can be a bit devious. But I think, people need to just be more open, ask straightforward questions. To use your example, Mark, would be, to sit down the first time you have those chicken wings and just say, which do you prefer?
Yeah, the problem is I assumed that he preferred the ones I liked.
Yeah, and that's it. We do assume lots of information. And the only way that we really find out what people are really interested in is when we ask questions and listen to them. Listen to their answers, and just follow that up and follow that questioning process through, check back with them, check our understanding, just make sure we really understand what it is that, they need, they want, that they're interested in. And that just makes the whole process so much easier. And part of that preparation process has got to be about formulating those really good questions that get to what you really want to know about.
Yeah, if only we could read their minds. This would be easy.
Yeah, it would be, wouldn't it? And it'd be really good if they were, again, really embrace that idea of, if I give lots of information, this person might help me, grow some value. Let's do this together, and just be much more open about things. And I guess, if you're asking really good questions, and you're building rapport with somebody, then you get into developing trust and the whole negotiation process. For me, it becomes less of a negotiation, more just an exchange of views, and then you quite easily move to an agreement that helps both sides.
Yeah. Okay, let me toss out one of my rules, and you can tell me if you like it, don't like it.
Okay.
Rule number 1, patience wins.
Okay. Yeah, I think you do. I think you absolutely have to be patient. How would you, in terms of a process, how would that work, Mark? What would patience come across as in behavior terms?
Not having to answer quickly, waiting a few days before you respond to somebody, making small steps in things that you give up.
Yeah, I think there is a tendency in negotiations, once you're in them, that, sometimes people want to get to the end, as you say, too quickly. It's pressured. So let's get a result.
So one of my favorite rules that is really tightly related to that one is never let your CEO negotiate pricing.
Yeah, there is a rule, isn't there, that absolutely the higher a person is in the organization, the more you'll get out of them.
Yes. Well, because they're less patient and more powerful.
Less patient, more powerful, and I think there's a bit of ego gets in there as well sometimes. They have to be the person that can do the deal.
Yep. Deal will close.
So, and they're the person that can do it. And a number of times I've seen people look at their senior directors, CEOs with astonishment at what they've agreed to. But yeah, absolutely, keep them out of the negotiation till it's all signed and sealed.
Now, it really depends on who you are, because if you're the sales guy trying to get the deal closed and you're paid on a flat commission rate, you want the CEO involved.
Yeah. Yeah. Deals that aren't the best tend to come back and bite you a bit later on, don't they? So
yes, absolutely. And then the other rule that I always teach, and I'm sure that you teach this, everybody who does negotiation, but that is you don't give anything unless you get something in return.
Absolutely. When you do negotiating courses and you talk to people, that's the first thing, isn't it? That, you have to make sure that you get value back, you protect your value, you begin to condition the other person to expect similar sort of behavior. So, and one of the things that we talk through with people when we go through that preparation process, that system, is exactly that. You've got to map out what you want to get from the other person, what you're prepared to trade, and make sure you do the numbers and work out that what you give is valuable to the other person, but it still preserves your own position. It's really important.
Yeah, and I think that whole give and get trade-off piece is where you figure out who likes the knuckles and who likes the drumsticks.
Yeah, it's a real test when you talk through a negotiation. You go through that type of process, that questioning process. Almost, do you prefer these or those? And a process of elimination, you'll get to where you need to get to. So it works. Yeah.
Yep. Andrew, we're going to have to wrap this up here in just a minute, but
Sure.
I have to ask the final question.
Mm-hmm.
What's the one piece of pricing advice you would give our listeners that you think could have a big impact on their business?
The one piece of advice, and I talk through this with all my clients really early on, is it goes back to where we started, understanding what's really important to your customers, what you can do, and your value to them. And as far as possible, quantify that value. Because as soon as you know that, and you confirm that with your customer and you get that confirmation, then the way that you approach the value conversation, the selling process, just gives you so much more confidence to ask for the prices that you deserve to get, and just makes the whole thing so much easier. It's all about confidence then and having the right mindset. And ultimately, again, I say to people that if we can focus on that and make sure we've got that in place, actually the negotiating bit shouldn't happen, because you've discovered that value, your own value that you can deliver for the other person. You've built that perception of value, you've built that willingness to pay across that value conversation. So really, they should get it. And I think it's just that confidence of knowing what you do for people and what results you get for them, what outcomes you can get for them, just makes the whole thing so much easier to go through.
Yeah, so Andrew, I ask that question every single episode, and I have to agree with you more than I've ever agreed with anybody else.
Thank you.
The single most important thing that I could think of for companies is to figure out what the heck value means to your customers. So
Yeah.
I think that was spot on. Andrew, thank you so much for your time today. If anybody wants to contact you, how can they do that?
They can, the easiest way is either to go onto LinkedIn, just put Andrew Bailey in the search. My business is called Commercial Strategy 4, and so they'll be able to spot me on LinkedIn. Or my website is www.commercialstrategy with the number 4 at the end, .co.uk. And then all my details are there. They can see me there. That would be great.
All right. Episode 73 is all done. Let's see. My favorite part of today's podcast, the fact that he ended with value is just huge. Loved that. What was your favorite part? Please let us know in the comments of wherever you downloaded and listened. While you're at it, would you please leave us a 5-star review? We take these very seriously and they're hugely helpful to us. Please don't forget we have a free community where all of my publications are put out. You'll find that at community.championsofvalue.com. If you have any questions or comments about this podcast or about pricing in general, feel free to email me, mark@impactpricing.com. Now, go make an impact.